Well, good morning. This is Barry Jones with Standards Plus History Academy, and we are beginning Warren Commission Part 2. Yesterday, we talked about how you rig an investigation and, of course, introduced the commission members themselves and their backgrounds, and saw pretty clearly that there were a couple entities that were going to be well protected throughout the course of this investigation, this pseudo investigation. And so today on part two, we're going to be dealing with a different question, which is what evidence was there to support the lone gunman theory, which is what the Warren Commission is going to end up supporting. And of course, a couple things we need to stipulate right from the beginning is, first of all, is that the Warren Commission is not like a police investigative unit. They're not out there collecting evidence and things of that nature. They are a wholly owned subsidiary, basically the FBI, which means whatever evidence the Warren commissioners are going to see is whatever evidence J. Edgar Hoover wants them to see. And of course, we learned yesterday, and we've seen in prior episodes where J. Edgar Hoover, hours after the assassination, has already told Bobby Kennedy that his brother was killed as a result of a lone gunman, and he identified the lone gunman as Lee Harvey Oswald. Then the next day, he issued a report to the public and said that Oswald was the lone gunman. This is before any investigation has taken shape or taken place. And then we saw that the Assistant Attorney General has issued a memo, which is going to be in the pipeline going to everybody who's involved in this case, that the public must be satisfied that Oswald acted alone. He has no confederates that are still presently at large, and that he would have been convicted if he'd gone to trial. So as far as the Department of Justice is concerned, and that includes the FBI, of course, it's already decided. Okay. So when I say that the Warren Commission is a wholly owned subsidiary of the FBI, what I'm saying is the Warren Commission is only going to get the evidence that supports what the FBI has already said, what the Attorney General's office has already said. So it's sort of unbelievable. It reminds me, when I was taking a course in college and we were examining this subject, my professor said to think of the Warren Commission like a court. And the Warren commissioners were like the jury, and they were hearing the evidence and considering and coming back with a verdict. And it sounded plausible at the time. And indeed, first few years I started teaching this and researching it, that's how I thought about it. But it's really not, if you think about it, because, in a courtroom, the jury hears both sides. The jury hears the prosecutor first, and after the prosecutor gets done, probably if you'd asked 99.9% of juries what they thought, they'd come back with a conviction almost immediately because they've only heard one side. There's always a defense, and the defense comes second. Well, in this case, the Warren Commission never hears the defense of the accused. It's just the prosecutor, and that's all they're inundated with. It's the prosecution. Kind of reminds me less of a court, more like an inquisition. I remember the old days, and they're trying to determine if a woman was a witch. They would say, well, put her in that barrel and dump her in that river over there, and if she floats, she's a witch, and we'll burn her at the stake. If she sinks, she's not a witch. She'll drown, but at least she's not a witch. That's about the chances that Oswald has emerging from the Warren Commission with any kind of defense, with any kind of chance of a defense, with any kind of chance of vindication. Exculpatory evidence is not going to be the order of the day. Let's put it that way. So anyway, what evidence was there to support lone gunman theory? So what we're going to present today is the evidence that the FBI, and that's important, the FBI gives the Warren Commission right up front which makes it look like a slam dunk case. I mean, by the time I get done today, you're going to think Oswald did it too. Okay. Uh, this is a famous picture in allegedly this is a backyard photo that Oswald posed for. There's been some question as to his authenticity. When Oswald was presented with this photo uh, during his interrogation, he immediately said it was fake. That his head was superimposed on somebody else's body. If it's not fake, it's pretty damning. You know, he's got the Mannlicher Carcano in his left hand. He's got the 38, his right holstered at his right hip, and he's holding communist literature. He's posing, like preparing for his big day, whatever. But this was this was the top selling Life. Well, actually, it was either one or two, depends. Life had the other edition with the Zapruder film, still shots. It's a very big seller. This also was a very big seller. So, in a lot of people's minds, this photo convicted Oswald in the eyes of the American people. I mean, he worked at the Texas School Book Depository where allegedly the shots came from. And he's holding the gun that allegedly the shots came from. And he's got the pistol on his side where allegedly the shots came from that killed Tippit. And he's a communist. I mean, he's just all wrapped up in one photo. Pretty convenient. So the Warren Commission has its marching orders, and they're going to, they have a mandate from LBJ, and that is to satisfy the American people. They're going to use the FBI for evidence. And of course, Hoover is in charge of all that FBI evidence. And Hoover's already, as we noticed, he's already made up his mind. So that's where they're getting their evidence. And then, of course, they got a CIA director, former CIA director, Alan Dulles, who is helping sell this lone gunman narrative, steering the commission away from any potential trouble spots that might point back to the CIA or into the conspiracy angle, et cetera, et cetera. So they begin with a conclusion and they work backwards, and most investigations, an honest investigation might begin with a hypothesis, a suspect, but then you consider all the evidence and you arrive at a conclusion based on that evidence. That's not what the Warren Commission does. The Warren Commission begins with the conclusion and then works backwards to fit the evidence into that narrative that supports that conclusion. So let's look at some of this lone gunman evidence, especially the ballistics evidence. Per the FBI, and you're going to see this over and over and over again, per the FBI, because remember, that's where they're getting all their evidence. They found 2 bullet fragments in the front seat of the limo. And after testing those bullet fragments, they said that they were fired to the barrel of the Mannlicher Carcano. All right, strike one. Number 2, per the FBI, the bullet that they found on the stretcher, the so-called magic bullet, Commission Exhibit 399, we've discussed that before, was also fired to the barrel of the Mannlicher Carcano. Strike 2. Number 3, per FBI, radiation tests performed independently by a man named Dr. Vincent Gwynn. This confirmed that all the lead bullet fragments, including the bullet fragments that they took out of the president's brain, came from the same bullets that were fired by the Mannlicher Carcano. So what they're saying is every bullet that we found, every bullet fragment that we have found was fired through the barrel of that Mannlicher Carcano. And if it's just a fragment, it came from a bullet that was fired to that Mannlicher Carcano. So what they're saying is everything was fired from the Mannlicher Carcano. One gun. All the bullets came from one gun. Right? And of course, we know that that's the Oswald rifle, right? Per the FBI, all 3 shell casings that were found when they went up and into the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, there were 3 shell casings that were found near the sniper's nest, and they said that they all came from the Mannlicher Carcano as well. So now what they're saying is, now we know not only were the bullets fired from this gun, we know where the gun did the firing. It was from the sniper's nest, because that's where we found the shell casings. That's where they would be ejected. Per the autopsy report, which we'll get into the autopsy, but the angle of the second shot, which is the magic bullet, which I have pictured here, and we'll go over that in just a second, was between 45 and 60 degrees, which is consistent with the trajectory of a shot from the 6th floor. In other words, the magic bullet came from that 6th floor window. And you can see the theory is that the bullet hit JFK in the back, and then it's coming down at probably about a 60-degree angle there, and then it reverses course, and now it's going up, comes out the front of his neck, which is interesting. Then it emerges from his neck, and somehow, yeah, this doesn't show the direction very well, but just think of it this way. If the shot hit Kennedy from the Texas School Book Depository, the bullet would be going to the left, right? Because the building was to his right. So the bullet would be going to his left. But now it has to emerge. First of all, it has to change trajectory and go, it's going down, now it's going up, come out its neck. And now it's got to change direction, because Connally was not sitting directly in front of JFK. He was sitting more to the side, leaned up against the car door. And so consequently, to go in his right shoulder, his right armpit area, you'd have to now start going right. So this bullet this is why we call it the magic bullet. It's coming down, then it goes up. It was going left, now it's going right. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. It's just, you can't make these things up. So it goes into his armpit, and then it emerges from his armpit and continues going right into his right wrist. And then it emerges from his right wrist, and now it starts going left again. His wrist is sitting up here on the door, propped up, and now it emerges and it goes left and buries itself in his left thigh. So the bullet changes direction a minimum of it was going left, then it was going right, and it's going right, and it's going left. So there's 3 changes of direction right there. And of course, trajectory, it changes trajectory, going down, and it goes up to come out his neck. And so there's at least 1 change of trajectory. So that's why skeptics call it the magic bullet. It's never in the history of a bullet have we seen. And then it emerged in Parkland Hospital in perfect condition. Minus, it had a tiny little defect at the end of it. Caused 7 wounds in 2 people. Did all this damage, and perfect looking bullet. All right, per the FBI, Governor Connally's right wrist had bullet fragments in it that matched the magic bullet. And of course, they've already linked the magic bullet to the Mannlicher Carcano. The bullet was, what they're saying the magic bullet is the one that they found at Parkland Hospital, and they said it was fired from the Mannlicher Carcano. And then they've said already that the magic bullet is consistent with a shot from the Texas School Book Depository 6th floor window, because the trajectory is the same. And so now they're saying that same bullet was in, the fragments of it were in Connally's wrist. So that's how they're making it all one bullet. I hope I don't confuse anybody. I'm trying to go as slow as I can. The ballistics evidence continues. Per the FBI, remember they found allegedly 4 shell casings at the site of the Tippit killing, and they said that the 438 shell casings found on the scene were fired from Oswald's 38. Okay. And then they said that the shell casings found on the J.D. Tippit scene were Winchester and Remingtons. Yes, we discussed that. And they said that the bullets in Tippit's body were Winchester and Remingtons. Yes, that's true. And then they say that the bullets in Oswald's .38 revolver at the time of his arrest were Winchester and Remington brands. All right, so that looks like open and shut. Of course, they don't get into uh, how many of them were Winchesters and how many of them were Remingtons. You notice that is excluded from that because that's exculpatory. If you remember an earlier episode. But anyway, so they've tied effectively the shooting at Dealey Plaza to the Mannlicher Carcano. They've tied the Mannlicher Carcano to the Texas School Book Depository. And they've tied all the bullets and bullet fragments to the Mannlicher Carcano, which came from the Texas School Book Depository. Of course, everybody knows that's where Oswald worked. So Dealey Plaza, shooting of the president, it's clearly Oswald. And now they're tying the Tippit shooting to Oswald. The shell casings, the 38, et cetera, et cetera. So the ballistics evidence looks pretty damning. I know, again, no defense, but this is what the prosecution, and the prosecution is not required to provide a defense. That's they're doing their job here. Now we got to tie Oswald to the rifle. We've tied the FBI has successfully tied the shootings to the Mannlicher Carcano and the Texas School Book Depository and the 38. Now we got to tie all those guns to Oswald. So that's where this picture comes in. I mean, he's posing with him, both of them, right? And they also have order forms that they have found in his living quarters. And they've done a handwriting analysis, and the order forms for the Mannlicher Carcano and the 38 revolver. Actually, these order forms they got from the manufacturer, from the company up in Chicago. They were able to get copies of these order forms. It was a mail order catalog, so you sit down, you cut out the form, and you write in your name and address. In this case, the PO address, and they do an analysis of that handwriting, and they come back 100% unanimously verified by experts to be the handwriting of Oswald. That's for both of them, for the Mannlicher Carcano and the 38. In an earlier episode, I showed you a newspaper where they had a big advertisement for the Klein Sporting Goods in Chicago, and someone had circled the Mannlicher Carcano, and then down at the bottom circled the 38. And I'm sure that was presented as Oswald having done that. And then there must have been an order form on that he cut out and sent in, and they were able to get that from Klein's and match the handwriting. They also went to the post office and got receipts of purchases and verified that the handwriting on that was also Lee Harvey Oswald. So that shows him ordering the guns and receiving the guns. Now, on the order forms, his name Oswald is not there. It's A. Heidel. And of course, that links to Oswald because they already have his identification. Remember, he had two forms of ID. One of them was A. Heidel. And so he's using A. Heidel as an alias that's already been determined by the second ID in his wallet. And so whether it's A. Heidel or Lee Harvey Oswald, doesn't matter. They have the evidence to show it's the same person. And then they have this backyard photo. So they have effectively, in pretty short order, been able to tie these shootings to the 38 and to the Mannlicher Carcano, the bullets to the 38, the Mannlicher Carcano, the location to the Texas School Book Depository 6th floor sniper's window, the guns now to Oswald because of the order forms, receipts of purchase, and handwriting, which matches, in the name of A. Heidel, which matches with his second ID. So this is an easy case. All the ballistics evidence is pointing in one direction. This is a picture of the sniper's nest, the alleged sniper's nest, which you can see the boxes have been stacked up very carefully. There's arrows where they found shell casings and palm prints and things of that nature. course, finding palm prints or fingerprints on boxes up there is not evidence really that incriminating to Oswald, because that's where he worked, and that's what his job was, picking up and toting boxes around. But it adds to the other evidence. They find they're going to present evidence that there's a palm print, Oswald's palm print on the Manicure Carcano. Of course, we've discussed in an earlier episode how that happened. But anyway, we're presenting the prosecution here. They find a palm print. They find a fingerprint on the trigger guard of the Manicure Carcano. They find a palm print on a box in the 6th floor sniper's nest. And the paraffin test, which, of course, the way they're going to present it is that the paraffin test proves that Oswald's right hand was involved in some kind of shooting because he had nitrates on it, which points to a pistol shot, but certainly not a rifle shot, which he would have nitrates on his face, his cheek, his neck area. And of course, we know he didn't. But again, this is the prosecution. So they're building a case here that the Texas School Book Depository building is the location of all the shooting. That's where Oswald worked. He built the sniper's nest as evidenced by the boxes. He handled the guns as evidenced by the palm prints and the fingerprints. And he used the gun as evidenced by the paraffin, or the rifle, or the pistol at least, as evidenced by the paraffin test. So if you're a Warren Commission member and you've heard that evidence to this point, looks pretty conclusive. They also are going to present the evidence that Oswald was in the Texas School Book Depository seconds after the shooting, which is confirmed by 2 witnesses, at least. We've already learned that Roy Truly, who was the building superintendent, took Officer Marion Baker up the stairs as they were going up to see if the shooter was still in the building or on top of the building or wherever. And at the 2nd floor, as they passed the break room, they both looked in the window and saw Lee Harvey Oswald sitting in the break room drinking a Coke. So yes, it is true. He was in the Texas School Book Depository building seconds after the shooting. Secondly, they're going to present evidence from Marina Oswald that Oswald confessed to her that he had attempted to assassinate General Edwin Walker in Dallas on April 10th, 1963. Now, this is an interesting story. In an earlier episode, we talked about, I think it was the Dallas episode, and how hostile Dallas was to JFK. And one of the reasons it was hostile is because Edwin Walker lived there. And Edwin Walker was a enemy of the Kennedys. Remember Jack Kennedy had fired him. He was a general over in Germany. He was proselytizing politically with his troops. So he fired him. Edwin Walker came back to a big hero's welcome in Dallas. The crowds wanted him to run for president against Kennedy in '64 primaries. He was virulently anti-communist, very conservative, a member of the John Birch Society, virulently anti-integration. Remember, he was the guy that went and stirred up all the trouble at Ole Miss. Bobby Kennedy had him arrested. When James Meredith was trying to enroll at Ole Miss, he stirred up all kinds of trouble. And he believed that JFK and the Kennedys were soft on communism and too pro integration. And this is the Deep South, and that just wasn't going to fly. So anyway, he's an enemy of the Kennedys, and he's been traveling around the country giving speeches, ridiculing Kennedy. And there's some talk he might actually he might actually agree to run for president in '64, at least in the Democrat primaries against Kennedy. That's where he lives. He lives in Dallas, and that's his house. And on April 10th, someone took a shot at him and narrowly missed him. He was sitting in front of a window reading a book or something, and the shot barely missed him and hit somewhere else in the room. But according to Marina, Lee confessed that it was him who did that. Now, he was never arrested for that crime, and it makes no sense if you think about it as far as motive is concerned, because how can you make a case that the same guy shot at Walker and assassinated Kennedy from a political standpoint, ideologically, the two are about as far apart as you can be. They were on opposite ends of the spectrum. So, what political statement would you be making by killing somebody on the left and then killing somebody on the right, or by getting the order reversed, killing somebody on the right first, and then killing somebody on the left later? Uh, Politically, it doesn't add up, doesn't make any sense. But nevertheless, Marina testifies that Lee uh, confesses to this assassination attempt. If you have been following along in all these earlier episodes, there's been a pretty extensive sheep dipping campaign underway, uh, and they've been using doppelgangers and all kinds of things to incriminate Oswald. Everything Oswald did, for example, the whole summer in New Orleans, all the leafleting and all the interviews on TV and radio to appear to be Marxist and pro Castro, was all ordered by Guy Bannister, his handler. He was doing what he was told to do, setting him up for what was going to happen in Dallas. And I think an easy explanation to this is that Oswald was ordered to do this. Let's just stipulate that he did do it. Okay, let's say that Marina is telling the truth. Well, I mean, is it that big of a stretch to think that he was ordered to do this, just like he was ordered to leaflet, just like he was ordered to do the interviews and call himself a Marxist and all the things that he did, establish the Fair Play for Cuba Committee? This goes a long way to showing that he is willing to kill somebody, right? Whether he kills him or not is irrelevant. If you can present evidence later that he's the one that took the shot, then it should, regardless, they're not concerned about what the political ramifications are. They're just concerned, is this man capable of such a crime? Well, clearly he is, if he took that shot on April 10th. So this goes to pattern, it shows state of mind, it shows ability, it shows what lengths you're willing to go to, et cetera, et cetera. If you can say that he tried to assassinate somebody 6 or 7 months earlier, then it's easy to understand or to get the American people to think of him in terms of being an assassin. If he's tried it before, sure, do it again. So pretty convenient evidence. You'll notice on that picture, by the way, that the license plate is blotted out. They took the license plate out of the back of that vehicle. Some JFK researchers question the legitimacy of this whole this image, this picture, just like they questioned the image of Oswald in the backyard photo. Why would the license plate be removed? What's the point of that? What's the evidence? Why would you hide the identity of that vehicle? I'm not here to say one way or the other. It's just an interesting factoid that I've seen a lot of people talk about with regards to this shooting. A lot of confusion about this shooting. Now, Edwin Walker had made some enemies, so it's not like it's a big surprise that someone would take a shot at him. But boy, it sure was convenient when you're presenting all this other evidence that is so incriminating to Oswald to add one more thing. Oh, this just happens to be an assassination attempt, showing that he had done it once before. So why would we be that surprised that he would do it again later? And then, of course, adding the cherry on top of the sundae is the evidence that Oswald is a self-confessed Marxist, which most people would associate Marxism with communism. He's a communist. Here's the quote, this poster, "I am a Marxist," which he said August 21st, 1963. That was in New Orleans. You remember right after the arrest where he got in a physical altercation with Carlos Bringuier on the city street. They were both arrested for disturbing the peace. And then he was requested to come do TV and radio interviews and even this little debate with Carlos Bringuier. And during the course of all that, he said, quote, "I am a Marxist." And Bringuier responded, because he said, "I'm a Marxist, not a Marxist-Leninist, not a communist." Carlos Bringuier comes back with, "What is the difference?" So anyway, you put all that together in the bucket and you set it on the in front of the jury, and you say it was his guns, that killed Tippit and Kennedy. It was his building where the shots came from. The bullets came from his guns. Here's all this evidence that they are his guns. They belong to him because he ordered them. And here's the handwriting. Uh, here's the receipt where he picked it up at the post office. So they're his guns. And here's a photo where he's posing with these guns. We found him in the Texas School Book Depository seconds after the shooting, so he was in the building. And then he fled. He was there and then he was gone. And then Marina says that he's tried it before, and he's a communist. There's your motive. That was the big thing. That was the big question all along, was what was his motive? Because according to Marina, he was a big Kennedy fan. And one of the reasons why, if you remember in that memo that Nicholas Katzenbach wrote, I started to read the beginning of the second paragraph. The first paragraph was the American people must be satisfied that Oswald was the shooter, that he acted alone, he didn't have confederates, and that he'd be convicted if there had been a trial. The second paragraph said, we don't need to entertain notions or speculation about motive. They never had a motive, and they knew they didn't have a motive because Marina was very emphatic. He was a big Kennedy fan. And so what's the motive? And so they're going to use every opportunity they have to link him to communism, which is why the Mexico City story was so important to them, because here he is conspiring with two communist governments, with a KGB expert in assassinations, and getting a travel visa to run away to a communist country afterwards. So the motive is that he's a Marxist. The motive is he's a communist, and so he's going to kill the American president. So what I've just presented this morning is all the evidence, the ballistics evidence, that points to Oswald being the lone gunman. And if you are a Warren Commission member and you don't know what we know now, you don't know that J. Edgar Hoover is only giving you one side. And he's not giving you any exculpatory evidence at all. Because I'm going to give you a bunch, right? But that's emerged decades. It's taken years for that to emerge later. Remember, the lie goes around the world 7 times before the truth gets out of town. So J. Edgar Hoover has already announced his conclusion. He's the guy giving you the evidence. And so that's what you're seeing. You're seeing the prosecution. You're never going to see a defense. You're never going to hear a defense. So sometimes, and I've been guilty of this, I've been very hard on the Warren Commission, dismissive of the members, and some of them deserve it. Alan Dulles deserves it. Gerald Ford deserves it. But there's some of them that don't deserve it. They're hearing all this. What are they to think? What are they to say? I guess you could ask for a defense. You could ask if there's any exculpatory evidence, but you're not going to get any. You're not going to get any. Whatever internal discussions you might have about any doubts you might have about the evidence, Gerald Ford is running right back to J. Edgar Hoover and reporting to him everything that's being said by whom. And so then J. Edgar Hoover can tailor his next batch of evidence to answer those questions. And then, of course, you got Alan Dulles sitting there staring everything away from the CIA. So it's like this trough. All this information is being fed into this trough, and it's all leading in one direction. It's all funneling down, narrower into one bucket. It's going to be the bucket that convicts Lee Harvey Oswald, and Oswald's dead. He can't defend himself, and there is no Kennedy defender there to defend or to look out for Kennedy's interests. It's just an inquisition, as I stated at the beginning. So that is today's episode 39. And tomorrow we'll begin looking at some of the other evidence, some of the inconvenient evidence that emerges later, that the Warren Commission either doesn't see, isn't privy to, but future investigations are forced to deal with. But the Warren Commission, because it happened so quickly and is concluded so quickly. That I think rush to judgment. Mark Lane kind of invented that term, or came up with that term to describe what happened at Warren Commission. And I think it's about as appropriate a term as you can come up with. And that was the point. We got to get this out quick. We got to get this out quick. We got to satisfy the American people. We got to get it out quick. There's this lust in the American people to get revenge, to know the truth. We got to get this out quick. And everybody wants to believe that Oswald is the bad guy. He's the assassin. He's after all, he's a communist. He's all these things. Everybody wants to play. So let's give them what they want. And of course, that meets the needs of various other parties that have things to hide as well. So that is today's episode. Thanks for watching. If you want to check out my website, it's sphistory.com. If you'd like to give me a thumbs up, that'd be appreciated, or hit the notification bell. I usually drop new content every morning. That's not always the case. Sometimes I get something else comes up. So if you want to know when content has dropped, hit the notification bell, and certainly subscribe to my channel. That's free. And also note that in the comments, I will put my website address link, also my Rumble account link, because as I've stated earlier, YouTube, with the YouTube censors, that you just never know what's going to get left up, what's going to get taken down. So I'm creating a backup account. So if you ever miss something, you can always go over. I think I have about 20 episodes uploaded to Rumble so far. So I've got about 20 more to put on there, but that's my backup site. And at some point, it'll probably be my primary site. So I'll put the link for that site up there as well. Until next time, everybody have a great day. Thank you.